Is this your student ID?
You were biking on the sidewalk back there.
I know, but I was just trying to get around the construction. I didn't realize it was a problem.
The fluorescent lights flickered above the campus parking lot, casting fractured shadows over the cracked asphalt. Jasmine Ellis gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white, as a patrol car eased alongside her. The officer's eyes narrowed behind mirrored sunglasses, the hum of his engine cutting through the silence like a warning. "You missed the stop sign back there," he said, voice flat, clipped. "Not a question." Jasmine exhaled slowly, keeping her hands visible on the wheel. I didn't see it," she murmured, tension coiling in her chest. "License and registration," he demanded, slamming a hand on the hood of her car. The sound reverberated through her like a fist to the ribs. She fumbled, retrieving her wallet. Every motion seemed magnified, every hesitation a mark against her. Around them, the campus had emptied for the evening. The wind carried distant footsteps, the occasional car door slamming. No one would see, no one would intervene. The officer leaned closer, eyes cold. "You think rules don't apply to people like you?" Shock froze her. The words, a blade, cut through the taut calm she had maintained. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She glanced down. A single message from an unknown number. "We're watching. Don't mess up." The officer's lips curved into a smirk. "Guess the mayor's daughter doesn't get special treatment tonight." Jasmine's breath caught. Recognition and fear collided. Her hand trembled over the keys. The patrol car lights spun red and blue, flashing across her face. She realized, with a sinking certainty, that this wasn't a simple stop. The officer held power she hadn't anticipated, and a truth she wasn't ready to confront. She had seconds to act, and every choice felt like a trap. The campus parking lot was nearly empty, the asphalt slick with a recent drizzle, the smell of wet concrete rising with the evening fog. Jasmine Ellis's fingers tapped nervously against the steering wheel, a rhythm she couldn't quite control. A patrol car rolled up beside her, the engine rumbling low, a predator's growl over the quiet of the deserted campus. "You missed the stop sign back there," the officer said, voice clipped, flat as a ruler. He didn't sound concerned. He sounded accusatory, testing her. Jasmine's mouth went dry. I didn't see it," she replied, keeping her hands flat on the wheel. She tried to sound steady, tried to appear harmless. "License and registration." He leaned on the hood, the metal cold and hard beneath his hand. The contact made her flinch, though she tried to hide it. Her fingers fumbled as she pulled out her wallet, heart hammering. The officer's mirrored sunglasses reflected the dim light, hiding his eyes. His gaze, though obscured, felt like it pierced her chest. "You think rules don't apply to people like you?" His words were measured but venomous. Shock froze her, the accusation a knife to the chest. "Excuse me," she whispered. The world seemed to narrow, focusing on his mouth, the way his lips curved slightly at the corner, the subtle tension in his jaw. Her phone vibrated against her thigh. She glanced down. A message. "We're watching. Don't mess up." She recognized the sender. Someone she hadn't expected. Someone who had access to information that should have remained private. Her pulse spiked. The officer smirked. "Guess the mayor's daughter doesn't get special treatment tonight." He said it like a verdict, like she was already guilty. Every instinct screamed at her to drive, to run, but the red and blue lights spun, dizzying, cutting across her face and the windshield. There was no hiding. "Please." "I didn't," she started, but he cut her off with a sharp motion. "You're not listening. Step out of the car." His tone brooked no argument, no negotiation. Hands trembling, she obeyed. The cold air bit at her skin, the drizzle slicking her hair against her face. Around her, the campus was silent. "Me." A few distant footsteps echoed faintly, a reminder that witnesses could exist but would likely remain indifferent. "I," she tried again, but he waved her off, impatient. You think you can charm your way out of this because of who your father is? Not tonight, he said. Each word dropped like stones in her chest. Her stomach knotted. Her father, the mayor. Political leverage she had assumed would protect her was useless here. He knew, and it changed everything. She reached for her bag in the passenger seat, eyes darting to the patrol car. He noticed. Don't even think about it, he snapped. The camera of a security drone whirred overhead, its soft mechanical whine suddenly deafening in the tension. Jasmine's breath came in shallow bursts. Every second stretched. Every movement, every choice, carried the weight of consequence she wasn't prepared to manage. Then silence. The officer's hand hovered near his belt. His smirk widened, eyes hidden but sharp. The distant footsteps stopped. The world held its breath, waiting for the next move. Jasmine knew it first. This was no ordinary stop. Every instinct screamed that crossing him, or failing to comply, would escalate far beyond a minor citation. And yet, moving forward felt impossible. The trap had snapped shut around her. Jasmine's footsteps echoed down the dimly lit quad, water dripping from the edges of her umbrella. Each step felt heavier than the last, weighed down not just by damp shoes but by the lingering sting of humiliation. The patrol car had retreated, but the memory of Officer Kavanaugh's smirk burned hotter than the night air. "Hey Jazz, you okay?" Malik's voice cut through the quiet. He jogged to catch up, hood pulled over his head, face concerned. "I'm fine," she said, forcing a smile she didn't feel. Her voice cracked despite herself. "You don't look fine." He slowed, adjusting the strap of his backpack. "I heard. People are talking." Jasmine's stomach churned. She didn't want to hear the rumors, the whispers that could twist the encounter into a story where she was the problem, the overreacting daughter of a mayor. "They're exaggerating," she said, but the lie tasted bitter. Malik didn't press. Instead, he gestured toward the library entrance. "Come on. Let's get inside before anyone else sees you." Inside, the warmth of fluorescent lights did little to erase the chill. Students hunched over laptops, murmuring quietly, eyes flicking toward her as she passed. The social pulse of the campus seemed to hum with judgment. At the front desk, a security guard nodded curtly, scanning her ID. Jasmine caught the slight narrowing of his eyes, the way he lingered just a second too long. Microaggressions wrapped in procedural courtesy. "Jasmine, you got a minute?" Professor Lin's voice called from the corner of the reading room. She approached, an encouraging smile plastered on her face, but her posture hinted at hesitation. "Yes," Jasmine replied, though her throat felt tight. "I heard about the stop. Are you sure everything's okay? Legally." Lin's voice dropped to a whisper, as if speaking too loudly might summon trouble. "I'm fine," Jasmine said again. But inside, panic and frustration churned. The dialogue was heavy, but each word layered with subtext: fear, judgment, doubt. Later, in the student lounge, whispers turned to pointed glances. One classmate muttered, "Think she's exaggerating? Or her dad really made trouble for that officer?" Another laughed quietly. Jasmine caught the sound, felt it like a slap. She sat alone, phone in hand, scrolling through the evening's notifications. Messages ranged from concerned friends to mocking strangers who assumed they knew the truth. Her father's position meant scrutiny was inevitable, yet it amplified the injustice rather than shielding her. "People are scared to talk," Malik said, lowering himself into the seat beside her. "Even professors. They'll nod, say it's unfair, but then they look the other way." Jasmine stared at him. "So, it's all just whispers and shadows." "Exactly," Malik said. "And Kavanaugh. He knows. That's power. That's control. And no one's stopping him." Her hands clenched into fists, nails digging into palms. She felt the weight of systemic bias pressing down, invisible but suffocating. Dialogue and observation painted the layers of complicity. Staff who ignored, peers who gossiped, administration that deferred, all feeding a cycle she couldn't easily break. By late evening, she wandered back toward her dorm, rain dripping from her hood, streets slick and reflective. A security camera blinked from a corner, a quiet witness. She felt its gaze, impersonal yet accusatory, a digital reminder that her every move was being catalogued. In the stairwell, a note slipped beneath her door. "We know what happened. Don't push back." No signature. No explanation. Only a chilling assertion of surveillance. A reminder that fear was being weaponized. Jasmine's reflection in the metal stair rail stared back at her, tense jaw, eyes wide with a mixture of anger and disbelief. Her voice, low and trembling, broke the silence. "They think they can scare me, but they don't know what I'll do next." The unease of the evening pressed down. The campus had become a labyrinth of whispers, half-truths, and veiled threats. And Jasmine realized fully that navigating it safely required more than caution. It required strategy, allies, and a courage she hadn't yet summoned. The student center buzzed with chatter, the hum of fluorescent lights blending with the clatter of coffee cups and low music from the cafe speakers. Jasmine walked in, backpack heavy on her shoulders, every step measured. She had rehearsed calm in the mirror, tried to compose her face into neutrality, but the memory of Officer Kavanaugh's words shadowed every movement. At the main hall, a table had been set up for a student-led charity event. Volunteers moved quickly, voices raised in laughter and instruction. Jasmine's friend Malik waved her over. "Hey, you made it," he said quietly, motioning to the far corner. "I thought you might have stayed in." "I needed to," Jasmine said, setting her bag down. Her voice was steady, but her stomach tightened as she scanned the room. A sudden, sharp voice cut through the murmur. "Ellis, step forward." She froze. Every head in the hall seemed to pivot toward her. Officer Kavanaugh, in uniform, his badge gleaming under the fluorescent glare, stood at the edge of the room. His presence swallowed the space, commanding it. "Excuse me." Jasmine's voice faltered. "You know what this is about," he said, walking closer. His tone was casual, but there was menace behind the neutrality. "We received complaints about reckless driving on campus." A volunteer muttered under her breath, "That can't be true." But it was too late. The room's attention had shifted. Phones were subtly raised, recording. Cameras clicked. Every student's gaze pressed against her like heat. I was careful," Jasmine said, shaking her head. Her voice trembled slightly. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You missed the stop sign," Kavanaugh said flatly, repeating the earlier accusation. "That's reckless." His eyes scanned the crowd, daring anyone to object. Whispers ran like wildfire through the room. Some students avoided her gaze. Others leaned in to watch the confrontation. The tension became tactile, a living thing pressing against her skin. Jasmine's palms were slick. She took a deep breath, trying to remember that evidence could protect her, but Kavanaugh's presence made every word feel hollow. "You're acting like this is a joke," Kavanaugh continued. "Do you think your father's position protects you?" The room went colder. Her heart sank. The weight of the mayor's influence, usually a shield, now felt like a target on her back. "I'm not joking," she said, her voice rising despite herself. "I followed every rule." Kavanaugh cut her off with a laugh that rang harsh and unkind. "Everyone follows the rules until they're caught. Let's see what the video says, shall we?" Someone in the back murmured. Jasmine's stomach plummeted. Security cameras along the hall had captured the event. He had orchestrated the moment for maximum public impact. Every motion, every word could be misconstrued, replayed, turned against her. A classmate, trying to defend her, stepped forward. "Officer, she's been nothing but careful." "You're..." Kavanaugh turned, his glare sharp. "Step back. Don't interrupt." The silence that followed felt like a cage closing. Jasmine felt the heat rising in her face. She wanted to vanish, wanted the floor to swallow her whole. Phones were raised subtly in her direction. Recording. Waiting. Everyone watching. I don't understand," she stammered, voice breaking. "Why are you doing this? Why?" Kavanaugh echoed, his tone smooth, taunting. Because people like you need to learn boundaries. Rules aren't suggestions. And neither is respect. A gasp ran through the hall. She clenched her fists. The unfairness, the raw weight of systemic abuse, pressed down. She realized that no one here could intervene without risk. This was public humiliation. Designed. Controlled. Malik leaned close, whispering urgently. Jazz, don't react. Let's record everything. Proof. Jasmine nodded, biting her lip to stop herself from lashing out. Every instinct screamed to confront him, to tear the lies apart, but she knew this was a battlefield. Strategy mattered more than anger. Kavanaugh gestured toward the doors. You'll be escorted to the station for questioning. Don't resist. Shock roared through her. The room erupted in whispers. Phones rose higher. Some students whispered accusations. Others whispered sympathy. The emotional weight was a public spectacle. Jasmine's mouth went dry. You can't do this, she managed, voice trembling. I already am, he said simply, and the words carried finality. Outside, the drizzle had returned, slicking the steps with a thin, reflective layer. Students lined the hallways, some following, some turning back, some recording silently. She could feel the gaze of dozens on her, the digital footprint of her humiliation forming even as she moved. At the patrol car, Kavanaugh motioned for her to get in. Jasmine's hands shook as she complied, her mind racing. Each second felt magnified. The injustice wasn't subtle anymore. It was tangible, recorded, witnessed, weaponized. Her phone buzzed again. A new message. Not everyone will help. Trust carefully. Jasmine swallowed. Every ally seemed uncertain. Every system failed to protect. The weight of public scrutiny, personal danger, and betrayal pressed against her ribs, each breath a struggle. She glanced back at the student center, the room now emptying, whispers trailing like smoke. Eyes would remember, cameras would remember, history would remember. But would justice? Inside the car, the engine's rumble felt threatening, not comforting. Kavanaugh's smirk mirrored the first night, confident and unshakable. Jasmine gripped her bag, staring straight ahead. Every instinct screamed fight, but the public setting made any reaction dangerous. She knew the humiliation would extend beyond this night, extending into social media, gossip, and institutional memory. The rain blurred her vision. The streetlights reflected on the wet asphalt like mirrors of accusation. And somewhere inside her, anger and fear combined into a quiet, simmering resolve. She wouldn't allow this to break her. Not fully. But she also realized the world outside the car wasn't safe. Every step from here would demand caution, strategy, and allies she hadn't yet fully discovered. The battle was just beginning. The door to the Ellis family residence closed with a muted thud behind Jasmine. The warmth inside did little to soothe the chill that clung to her bones. Her father, Mayor Richard Ellis, sat in the living room, a newspaper folded on his lap. The headline screamed about local campus incidents, though it did not yet name her directly. Jasmine, he said, voice steady but tinged with tension. We need to talk. She sank into the armchair across from him, clutching her backpack like a shield. It's nothing, Dad. Just a misunderstanding. Don't lie to me, he replied sharply, placing the newspaper aside. I know Kavanaugh pulled you over. And I know what he said. His eyes were a mix of concern and frustration, an internal calculus balancing personal protection against political optics. I can handle it, she insisted, but her voice quivered. It's just, I don't understand why he's targeting me. Targeting you? Her father leaned forward. Jasmine, you're the mayor's daughter. Everything you do carries weight. That officer knows it. And so does the campus. She shook her head, anger flaring. So what? Because of who I am, I'm supposed to stay silent. Pretend it didn't happen. Mayor Ellis rubbed his temples. It's not about silence. It's about strategy. If this becomes public, it could spiral politically, legally. I need to protect you and the administration. Jasmine's chest tightened. Protecting her, or protecting himself. The line blurred. So, I'm supposed to let him humiliate me. Let him get away with it. Her father's expression softened for a fraction of a second. I know it feels unfair. But the system is complicated. You can fight it, yes. But you also need to consider the consequences. For you, for me, for the city. Malik's earlier words echoed in her mind. The power dynamics, the whispers, the institutional complicity. The realization that her family's influence could both shield and trap her made her stomach churn. Her mother, Dr. Helen Ellis, entered quietly, placing a hand on Jasmine's shoulder. You have to be careful, honey, she said gently. Anger can drive you, but caution keeps you alive. That officer isn't just enforcing the law. He's exercising power. And power isn't always visible. I don't want to be careful, Jasmine said, voice rising. I want justice. Justice isn't always immediate, her father replied. Sometimes it's strategic. If you make a misstep now, it could backfire on everyone. The room fell silent. Jasmine felt trapped, caught between familial caution and personal indignation. The weight of institutional power, of systemic bias, pressed down on her. Every instinct urged confrontation, but the calculus her parents presented argued patience, planning, and discretion. I can't just wait, Jasmine said finally, teeth clenched. He humiliated me in front of everyone. He recorded it. People saw. And you're telling me, what? To bury it. You're not burying it, her mother said quietly. You're choosing the timing and method of your response. That's what separates victory from disaster. Jasmine leaned back, frustration coursing through her. Dialogue flowed between them, sharp and heavy with tension. Every word weighed. Every silence carried implications. The room seemed smaller, tighter, as if the walls themselves pressed against her resolve. Her father finally sighed. All right. If you're determined to move forward, we'll support you. But you must understand. Nothing will be simple. Kavanaugh has influence, allies. The administration isn't eager to intervene. You'll need allies of your own, strategy and patience. Jasmine stared at him, her mind a whirlwind of emotion. Anger, fear, disbelief and determination. The public humiliation, the systemic bias, the betrayal, it all converged. And yet, beneath it, a plan began to form. I'll do it, she said, voice steady now, hardened. I'll fight this. On my terms. But I won't let him intimidate me, or anyone else. Her mother nodded, relief and concern mingling in her expression. Then we'll stand behind you. But remember, courage alone isn't enough. You need preparation, evidence, and allies. Her father added. And you'll need to be ready for backlash. People will judge, whisper, maybe even try to manipulate the story. You must remain clear-headed, focused, strategic. Jasmine's heart pounded. The path ahead was clear in one sense. Confront systemic abuse, hold the officer accountable. Yet the obstacles loomed large. Public opinion, institutional complicity, family reputation, and her own fear. Later that night, as she sat in her room, reviewing the day's events, Jasmine realized that the humiliation she suffered in the student center was only the beginning. Each conversation, each whispered threat, each veiled comment added layers to the struggle. But it also fueled her resolve. She picked up her phone, fingers hovering over a note she had drafted earlier, documenting every interaction, every detail, every witness. Proof, evidence, control. The words felt heavy but necessary. The storm of pressure, familial, institutional, social, was suffocating. But within it, Jasmine felt the first spark of agency. She could not erase what had happened, but she could prepare, plan, and act. And in that realization, the first seeds of resistance took root. By midnight, the house was silent, but Jasmine's mind remained active. Every dialogue, every microaggression, every institutional limitation from earlier in the week played back in vivid detail. She would not simply survive this, she would confront it. And when the time came, The consequences of abuse of power would be laid bare. Jasmine sat in the sterile waiting room of the law firm, the hum of fluorescent lights overhead matching the rhythm of her anxious heartbeat. Stacks of case files lined the shelves, orderly and impersonal, a stark contrast to the chaos of the last week. The receptionist glanced up but offered no comforting words. This was bureaucracy, indifferent and methodical. "Ms. Ellis," voice called. Jasmine stood, following the attorney, a tall woman with sharp eyes and a brisk stride, into a small office. "I'm Claire Donovan. Let's get straight to the point." Jasmine swallowed. "Thank you. I need to file a complaint against Officer Kavanaugh. It's not just the traffic stop. He humiliated me publicly. He targeted me because of my race, and now the incident is recorded." People saw. Donovan nodded, flipping open a leather-bound folder. "You're taking this seriously. That's good. But be aware, institutional resistance is strong. Police departments don't welcome complaints, especially against officers with tenure or connections." "I understand," Jasmine said, voice tight. Fear and anger intertwined, pushing her words faster than intended. I need it documented. I need someone to hear that this isn't right." Donovan's eyes were sharp. "We'll file an official complaint with Internal Affairs, and I'll advise on preparing evidence. Every witness statement, every video clip, every text message counts. But this will be slow, bureaucratic, and often frustrating." Jasmine nodded. "I've already documented everything. Campus security cameras, witness statements, my own notes." "Good," Donovan said. "Documentation is crucial. Officers like Kavanaugh rely on power and fear, not proof. But if you have evidence, you can challenge that." The conversation shifted to strategy. Donovan emphasized careful dialogue, measured language, and avoiding emotional outbursts in any formal setting. Jasmine scribbled notes, each word a lifeline. The dialogue was dense, almost clinical, but it mapped the path forward. After the consultation, Jasmine walked to the courthouse steps, the air crisp and sharp. Protesters shouted 2 blocks away, signs raised high, their voices a chorus of indignation and hope. She observed silently, feeling the tension ripple through the crowd, a mirror of her own internal struggle. Inside, she met with an investigator from the police department's Internal Affairs. Dialogue was formal, procedural, yet every phrase carried undertones of judgment and caution. "Miss Ellis, we've received your statement. Officer Kavanaugh denies any misconduct. Do you have corroborating evidence?" "Yes," Jasmine said firmly. "Cameras, witnesses, recordings. All documented." The investigator's pen paused. "Be aware, accusations against officers can escalate politically. Are you prepared for potential scrutiny?" Jasmine's jaw tightened. "I am. I want accountability, not anonymity. I want fairness." The investigator nodded but remained neutral, a reminder that the system itself was cautious, protective of its own. Every dialogue, every question, highlighted the weight of institutional bias. Later, Jasmine sat in a cafe with Malik, reviewing the documentation. "We need every detail," he said. "Even small things, the way he addressed you, gestures, tone. They'll matter in a formal complaint." Jasmine exhaled, tension in her shoulders. "It feels like they expect me to fail, like every word I write is already being doubted." Malik placed a hand on hers. "That's the system. It doesn't admit bias easily. You have to show it, prove it, document it relentlessly. That's how you fight power." Back at home, she drafted formal statements, compiling timelines, witness accounts, and recorded incidents. Each word was deliberate, heavy with precision and emotion. Dialogue excerpts from prior encounters were included, capturing the subtle and overt abuse. Officer Kavanaugh's smirks, threats, and dismissals. The documents were more than reports. They were weapons of accountability. A late-night call came from an anonymous source within the campus security office. The voice was hushed, cautious. "Miss Ellis, you're not alone. We have files on him. Historical complaints, patterns. You're not imagining this. Jasmine's pulse quickened. What do you mean? There's more than you know. People have tried to report him before. Most complaints disappear. But if you want, I can help you compile them. She exhaled slowly. Yes, that's what I need. The call ended, leaving a mix of relief and trepidation. Allies existed but cautiously, invisibly. Institutional resistance was real, entrenched. The path forward demanded vigilance, documentation, and calculated risk. Days later, Jasmine and Donovan submitted the formal complaint. The dialogue with Internal Affairs was tense, measured, each statement carefully worded. The investigator nodded, recording details, but the underlying tension, the power dynamics, the subtle disbelief, was palpable. You understand the process can take months, correct? The investigator said. Kavanaugh has seniority, political ties. Patience will be required. Jasmine met their gaze. I understand. But patience doesn't mean silence. I won't be ignored. Walking out, she felt the weight of systemic bias still pressing, but a quiet satisfaction lingered. Action had been taken, evidence documented, voices aligned. The first step toward accountability had been achieved, however cautiously. That night, Jasmine stared at the ceiling, her mind racing through conversations, strategies, and potential fallout. Every word spoken to lawyers, investigators, and allies had implications. Every recorded detail increased her leverage, but also heightened her visibility, her exposure. The humiliation, the public whispers, the institutional obstacles, all converged into a single truth. Confronting abuse of power required meticulous planning, courage, and resilience. She could not predict the obstacles, but she could control her response. Every dialogue, every recorded interaction, every ally would become a part of the narrative. And somewhere inside, beneath fear and frustration, a burning resolve solidified. She would not only survive this, she would challenge it. Every act of injustice would be met with deliberate, strategic resistance. The university library smelled of old paper and polished wood, the quiet punctuated only by the occasional cough or the scrape of a chair. Jasmine sat at a corner table, files and notebooks spread around her like a fortress. Malik leaned over her shoulder, scrolling through emails on his laptop, while Professor Lin flipped through printed reports. We have to map out every interaction Kavanaugh has had, Lin said, voice low, precise. Patterns matter. Institutional bias isn't a single incident. It's systemic. Jasmine nodded. I've documented everything I could. Text messages, videos, eyewitness accounts. But it still feels small compared to his influence. It's not small, Malik interjected. It's the start of exposure. You're not alone. The conversation was interrupted by a soft knock at the table. A journalist, Elena Morales, stepped forward. Her camera bag was slung over her shoulder, notebook in hand. I heard what's happening, Elena said, eyes sharp. I cover campus affairs. If you want, I can help make sure this doesn't disappear into bureaucracy. Jasmine studied her. Trust felt dangerous. Alliances carried risk. One misstep and Kavanaugh could retaliate, escalate, or manipulate the narrative. We'll need proof, she said finally. Every word, every file, every recording. Elena smiled slightly. Already ahead of you. For the next few hours they coordinated. Jasmine relayed her experiences, Malik cross-referenced timelines, and Lin noted systemic patterns. Microaggressions, dismissals, delays, and subtle threats. Dialogue dominated their strategy session, each sentence a calculated piece of the puzzle. But not all alliances were trustworthy. Later, a supposed peer advisor approached Jasmine. You know, sometimes it's better to let things slide, he said, leaning close. I've got connections. I could smooth things over. What are you suggesting? Jasmine asked, eyes narrowing. Just careful. Not everyone is on your side. Sometimes the wrong move can ruin you, he replied vaguely. Jasmine's pulse quickened. This wasn't guidance. It was coercion masked as advice. She excused herself, heart pounding. The encounter left her wary, aware that betrayal could come from unexpected quarters. Dialogue, tone, hesitation, all became tools to assess loyalty. That evening, she reviewed documents at home. Her phone buzzed with an encrypted message. Check the shared drive. There's historical documentation of complaints against him. The sender was anonymous but credible. Kavanaugh's pattern of abuse extended far beyond her own experience. Jasmine called Malik, whispering quickly. It's bigger than we thought. He's been doing this for years. People have tried to report him before. Complaints vanished. Then this is our chance, Malik said, determination evident. Compile everything. Publicize it strategically. We have allies now. Journalists, professors, witnesses. We can corner him. Even with support, the tension was palpable. Dialogue with allies revealed both hope and caution. Every sentence weighed potential consequences, risk of retaliation, and the fine line between exposure and danger. The first public step came at a small campus meeting. Jasmine presented the compiled documentation to Lynn and a few trusted students. Screens displayed timestamps, security camera footage, and transcribed encounters. This isn't just a complaint, Lynn said, pointing to patterns in the data. It's evidence of systemic abuse. And the public record will back it up. Malik leaned close. We have to release it carefully. Too soon, and Kavanaugh could manipulate or suppress it. The planning continued late into the night. Dialogue, strategy, and observation dominated. Every detail mattered. Phrasing, tone, order of disclosure. But even as they prepared, Jasmine felt the weight of exposure. Betrayal lurked nearby, reminders that not everyone could be trusted. A careless word could undo weeks of preparation. The paranoia was exhausting yet necessary. Then came the breakthrough. An anonymous tip to Elena Morales revealed additional files, emails between campus officials showing prior complaints and their suppression. The journalist's excitement was tempered with caution. This is explosive, she whispered. But it could backfire if we're not careful. Jasmine nodded. Strategy, timing, and precision had never mattered more. She felt a mixture of vindication and dread. Allies strengthened her position, yet betrayal remained a constant threat. Every dialogue, every disclosure, every decision carried consequences. That night, Jasmine stared at the documents, feeling both empowered and vulnerable. She understood fully that confronting systemic abuse required not just courage but meticulous planning, vigilance, and awareness of potential treachery. The network of allies was forming. A journalist willing to report, a professor providing analysis, friends and students contributing evidence, but the risks remained high. Every ally carried their own motivations, and every whisper of betrayal threatened to unravel the effort. By the time she set her phone down, Jasmine's resolve had crystallized. She would proceed carefully, methodically, exposing Kavanaugh's abuse without giving him room to manipulate the narrative. The public humiliation, institutional resistance, and personal betrayal had forged a determined strategy. Kavanaugh had underestimated her. He believed fear and power alone could control her. But she had allies now, documents, and a plan that accounted for both institutional inertia and human duplicity. Dialogue, evidence, and persistence would be her weapons. The battle for accountability was no longer abstract. It was concrete, methodical, and strategically armed. Jasmine would confront systemic abuse not with blind anger but with orchestrated precision. Allies would shield her, evidence would fortify her, and every betrayal would be countered with careful maneuvering. The morning news cut sharply through Jasmine's quiet apartment, the anchor's voice crisp and unrelenting. A developing story on campus harassment and alleged abuse of power has sparked outrage this week. Anonymous sources claim multiple complaints were previously suppressed. Details are emerging. Jasmine's heart raced. The moment she and her allies had worked toward had arrived. Public exposure. Malik sat beside her, laptop open, monitoring social media responses. "It's already trending," he said. "Students are sharing clips, screenshots. It's everywhere." Jasmine swallowed. Each post carried both power and risk. Public exposure could force accountability, but also provoke backlash, threats, and personal attacks. The weight of systemic retaliation pressed on her chest. Later, at a press conference organized by journalist Elena Morales, Jasmine stepped up to the microphone, flanked by Lynn and Malik. Cameras clicked, flashes illuminating her tense expression. The room hummed with anticipation, whispers rippling through reporters, students, and faculty. "I am Jasmine Ellis," she began, voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "What I experienced on campus was not an isolated incident. Officer Kavanaugh has used his position to harass, humiliate, and intimidate students, particularly students of color, for years." Questions flew, reporters pressing for details. Each dialogue segment mattered. Tone, clarity, specificity. Jasmine recounted the incidents, her words precise, measured, yet charged with the truth of her lived experience. "Were there witnesses?" one reporter asked. "Yes," Jasmine replied. "Students, staff, and recorded footage all corroborate the events. I have filed formal complaints with Internal Affairs and provided documentation of patterns of abuse." Kavanaugh's reaction, caught on live stream, was a mixture of defiance and unease. He remained in uniform, arms crossed, but his stance betrayed a subtle faltering. A student raised her hand. Why didn't anyone stop him before? Jasmine's jaw tightened. That is precisely the problem. Institutional complicity. Silence and dismissal protect abusers, not victims. This exposure is not about revenge. It's about accountability. Outside the press conference, campus buzzed. Students whispered, some supportive, some skeptical. Phones recorded, social media amplified, and public attention forced administration to respond. Dialogue among officials was terse, defensive. Messages leaked, revealing prior knowledge of complaints and attempts to suppress them. Jasmine received an anonymous message. "They can't cover this up anymore. You did it." Relief and apprehension collided. The stakes remained high. Kavanaugh was still dangerous, still entrenched, but momentum had shifted. Hours later, Internal Affairs summoned Kavanaugh for questioning. The dialogue, heavily recorded, captured tension, evasion, and thinly veiled aggression. Every denial, every attempt to manipulate the narrative, was countered by Jasmine's compiled evidence. "You claim harassment never occurred," the investigator said. "Yet we have documentation, multiple witnesses, video recordings, and previous suppressed complaints." Kavanaugh's jaw tightened. "I've done my duty. Any allegations are exaggerated." Jasmine's eyes narrowed. Exaggeration. This isn't about opinion. It's about documented abuse, intimidation, and misuse of authority. The confrontation was tense, dialogue sharp, evidence undeniable. Public and internal scrutiny left him cornered. His influence, once a shield, now became a vulnerability. Every lie, every act of suppression was exposed. Even as exposure unfolded, Jasmine felt the emotional toll. Flashbacks to public humiliation, whispered doubts from peers, and the months of strategizing weighed heavily. Resilience came at a cost. Anxiety, sleepless nights, and a pervasive awareness of systemic fragility. By evening, the first tangible consequences arrived. Administrative suspension, pending legal review, and internal investigation open to public oversight. Dialogue from the press was charged with both satisfaction and scrutiny. "Has justice been served?" one reporter asked, voice probing. Jasmine paused. "Justice is a process, not a single event. But accountability has begun. And for that, we must continue to document, speak, and resist systemic abuse wherever it occurs." Social media carried the story worldwide. Comments ranged from support to hostility, reflecting societal divisions and deep-seated biases. Jasmine read, absorbed, and stepped away, mindful of both empowerment and ongoing risk. Dialogue online mirrored real-life dynamics. Support and complicity, courage and hesitation. That night Malik and Jasmine reviewed the outcomes. "Kavanaugh can't manipulate the narrative anymore," Malik said, relief evident. "I know," Jasmine replied, voice low. "But exposure doesn't erase trauma. It doesn't undo humiliation. It's just the first step." Her parents called cautious but proud. Richard Ellis reminded her, "You've done more than anyone could expect. But remember, accountability often takes time. The system moves slowly." Jasmine nodded. She understood fully. Public exposure was a weapon, but also a burden. Dialogue, strategy, and vigilance would continue. Allies had strengthened her, evidence had fortified her, and betrayal had sharpened her awareness. By midnight, Jasmine sat alone in her room, reviewing documents, notes, and media coverage. The network of witnesses, journalists, and institutional records created a lattice of accountability. Each conversation, each recorded statement, each strategic disclosure ensured that power alone could not silence truth. Kavanaugh had been exposed, cornered, and forced to face consequences. Yet Jasmine's own journey, through fear, humiliation, strategy, and resistance, remained ongoing. The emotional cost was high, but the lesson was clear. Systemic abuse could be challenged, confronted, and ultimately resisted through deliberate, strategic action. The night was quiet. Outside, campus lights reflected off wet pavement, a mirror to the turbulence of recent weeks. Jasmine exhaled slowly, aware that vigilance, courage, and precise action were her tools, and that the fight for justice was both personal and collective. The morning sun streamed through Jasmine's bedroom window, casting sharp lines across her desk, where folders, notes, and printouts lay meticulously arranged. Months of documentation, witness statements, and strategic notes created a battlefield of truth. Her fingers traced the edge of a file detailing Officer Kavanaugh's prior complaints, each page a testament to persistence and careful planning. Across town, Kavanaugh's world was unraveling. Administrative suspension had transitioned into formal hearings and public scrutiny. Emails between colleagues revealed prior suppression of complaints, and every denial he made was now subject to verification against Jasmine's meticulous records. Power that had once shielded him now highlighted his vulnerability. Her father, Mayor Richard Ellis, stepped into the room quietly. "You've prepared for the press conference?" he asked, voice steady but tinged with concern. "I have," Jasmine replied. "I'll stick to the facts, clarify the narrative, and ensure accuracy. No missteps." Richard studied her for a moment. "Your composure is admirable. Just remember, the emotional toll is real. You've carried more than most realize." "I understand," she said, though the memory of public humiliation and whispered doubts still pressed against her resolve. At the campus press area, cameras clicked and microphones hovered. Malik, Professor Lin, and journalist Elena Morales flanked Jasmine. Each movement, each word was deliberate and calculated. "Today," Jasmine began, voice steady yet charged, "we confront not just a single act of harassment, but a systemic failure. Officer Kavanaugh's repeated abuse, intimidation, and harassment of students, particularly students of color, will no longer be ignored." Reporters pressed, their questions rapid and probing. "What consequences is he facing?" "Administrative suspension, internal investigation, and potential legal proceedings," Jasmine answered firmly. "More importantly, this is about accountability within the institution. Abuse of power cannot go unchecked." Another reporter asked, "How has this experience affected you personally?" Jasmine paused, her mind briefly revisiting the public humiliation, the whispers, the fear. "It has been traumatic," she said finally. "Humiliating and fear-inducing. But it has strengthened my resolve. Accountability is painful but necessary. Change begins with persistence and truth." Every dialogue exchange was deliberate, balancing transparency with control. Malik's presence reminded her that behind composure lay hours of anxiety and preparation. After the press conference, students approached cautiously. Some offered support, others hesitated. Social media amplified truth, and the administration was forced to respond. Internal emails and memos, previously suppressed, were now scrutinized. The tide of public attention had shifted. At home, Jasmine's mother, Dr. Helen Ellis, spoke softly. "You've done remarkable work, but remember, resilience isn't only about victory. It's about surviving, learning, and continuing despite trauma." Jasmine nodded. Dialogue with her family reinforced a lesson she had learned. Accountability did not erase the emotional cost. Later, Malik, Lynn, and Jasmine met to plan next steps. Campus forums, educational workshops, and institutional oversight recommendations. Lynn emphasized systemic change, highlighting that exposure was a first step, but sustainable reform required action. Malik added, "We also need to support students who didn't come forward. Fear is powerful, but courage can ripple." Reflecting on months of fear, strategy, and exposure, Jasmine acknowledged both victories and scars. Public humiliation, betrayal, and systemic resistance had been painful, yet the experience had sharpened her awareness of institutional bias and personal agency. Dialogue, documentation, and alliances were now her tools. That night, an anonymous internal message confirmed progress. "The internal reports are thorough. He will face consequences. Your persistence made the difference." Relief and apprehension intertwined. Kavanaugh's downfall was not simple revenge. It was accountability achieved through strategy and evidence. Yet Jasmine knew emotional costs persisted. Public exposure could not erase the trauma she had endured, the humiliation she had faced, or the awareness of institutional fragility. Resilience did not mean complacency. It meant transforming trauma into awareness, strategy, and vigilance. Before sleeping, she reviewed her documentation. Timelines, witness statements, correspondence. Each entry represented a step toward justice, a record of truth, and proof that careful preparation could challenge systemic abuse. Outside, city lights reflected off wet streets, mirrors of the turbulence within her. Power had been challenged, bias confronted, and accountability begun. Still, vigilance, courage, and clarity remained essential. She felt exhaustion and relief, intertwined with awareness of the long road ahead. Poetic justice had been served. Kavanaugh faced exposure, suspension, and public scrutiny. Jasmine had reclaimed agency, but at the cost of trauma and emotional strain. The chapter closed with balance. Accountability established, resilience strengthened, and systemic awareness heightened. Jasmine understood that justice required persistence, courage, and strategic action, qualities she had honed in the face of fear, betrayal, and institutional oppression. The campus was quieter now, the immediate storm of media attention beginning to settle into a tense calm. Students whispered less, though the memory of public exposure lingered in hallways, lecture halls, and dormitories. Jasmine walked through the quad, backpack slung over one shoulder, every step measured. The physical sensation of the campus remained the same: trees, benches, and buildings, but the emotional landscape had shifted. "People are talking about you differently," Malik said as he caught up, hood up against a light drizzle. "Some with respect, some with resentment. But mostly, people are noticing that this matters." "I know," Jasmine replied, eyes scanning the students around her. "I can see it. The tension in their gaze, the hesitation before they speak. It's like they're weighing every word against what happened." Malik nodded. "And the administration. Any word?" "Yes," she said, flipping her phone to show an official campus memo. Internal investigations had led to stronger oversight measures, policy recommendations for reporting misconduct, and mandatory bias awareness workshops for campus security. The change was procedural, measured, yet symbolically important. Still, the emotional cost remained palpable. The memory of Kavanaugh's smirk, the whispers in the student center, the humiliating spotlight, it lingered like an unwelcome shadow. She had acted decisively, strategically, and publicly, yet the trauma was not erased by exposure. Dialogue with Malik and Lynn reinforced that resilience did not erase pain. It reframed it into actionable awareness. At home, her parents were supportive, but their tone reflected a mixture of pride and caution. "You've done well," Dr. Helen Ellis said. "But remember that vigilance is ongoing. Power structures don't disappear because one individual faces consequences." Jasmine nodded. "I understand. The work continues." Her father added, "And your courage has changed perceptions. Not just on campus but in the broader community. That's no small accomplishment." In private moments, Jasmine reflected on the months of fear, strategy, and exposure. She revisited recordings, notes, and conversations, analyzing every dialogue, every reaction, every subtle microaggression that had shaped her journey. Patterns emerged. How institutional silence, peer hesitation, and procedural loopholes allowed abuse to persist. Her understanding of systemic injustice deepened. One evening, Malik and Jasmine sat on a bench by the campus fountain, watching water ripple in the dim light. "You know," Malik said softly, "people will try to forget this. They'll pretend it didn't happen, or that you overreacted." "I know," Jasmine replied. "But truth persists. Evidence persists. And so does the memory of courage, persistence, and resistance." Dialogue between them was careful, reflective, highlighting both the emotional toll and the moral victories. Malik reminded her that support networks mattered, that advocacy required patience and strategic engagement. Later, Jasmine attended a campus forum on institutional bias. Students, staff, and faculty gathered, cautiously navigating discussions on accountability, transparency, and fairness. Jasmine shared her experience, her words deliberate, tempered by both honesty and precision. "I am not here for personal revenge," she said. "I am here to demonstrate that power cannot be wielded to intimidate, silence, or marginalize. We all bear responsibility for creating an environment of fairness, transparency, and justice." The dialogue prompted reflection among attendees. Questions were asked, hesitations acknowledged, and policies discussed. Jasmine listened carefully, aware that systemic change required continuous engagement, not a single public confrontation. Back at home, the quiet evening brought private reflection. Jasmine journaled her thoughts, detailing both procedural victories and emotional scars. She acknowledged the persistent tension between public triumph and private trauma. Exposure had yielded accountability, yet healing was ongoing. She considered the role of her family, allies, and institutional participants. Each dialogue, each interaction had shaped outcomes, reinforced strategies, or revealed vulnerabilities. Trust had been tested, betrayal encountered, but careful documentation and planning had mitigated risk and amplified impact. A late-night message from Elena Morales summarized public sentiment. "Your courage sparked accountability and conversation. Not everyone will approve, but the system has shifted. Keep documenting. Keep speaking." Jasmine smiled faintly. The path forward remained challenging. Public awareness, policy reform, and community engagement were ongoing processes. Her personal journey through fear, humiliation, and strategic resistance had forged resilience but not complacency. Dialogue, evidence, and vigilance would continue to be her tools. Before sleeping, she reviewed her documentation once more. Timelines, witness statements, correspondence, all were carefully filed. Each entry represented a step toward justice, a record of truth, and a testament to strategic persistence in confronting systemic abuse. Jasmine's reflection concluded with clarity. Accountability required courage, strategy, and sustained effort. Institutional power could be challenged, but only through preparation, alliances, and meticulous documentation. Public exposure achieved one level of justice. Continued vigilance ensured its persistence. As city lights reflected off rain-slicked streets outside her window, Jasmine felt the enduring weight of her experience. Trauma, fear, and public scrutiny remained, but they were counterbalanced by awareness, agency, and strategic empowerment. Dialogue and action had shifted the power dynamics, exposing abuse, and compelling institutional response. In the quiet, she whispered to herself, "This is not the end, but it is a beginning of resilience, vigilance, and continued resistance." The courthouse steps glinted under a pale morning sun, marble surfaces reflecting the tension that had built over months. Jasmine adjusted her blazer, clutching the files that had become both armor and evidence. The city, the campus, and the media were watching, every move, every word weighed. This was the culmination, the moment where strategy, documentation, and persistence converged. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with controlled energy. Lawyers shuffled papers, journalists whispered behind cameras, and Kavanaugh sat rigidly in his uniform, attempting a mask of confidence that barely concealed unease. Public scrutiny had eroded his carefully constructed shield of authority. Jasmine's lawyer, Claire Donovan, leaned close. "Stick to the facts, Jasmine. Evidence speaks louder than emotion." "I will," Jasmine replied, voice steady, though her pulse raced. Months of preparation, countless interviews, and meticulous documentation had led to this. Her words would carry the weight of truth, not conjecture. The hearing began. Dialogue was precise, legal, and strategic. Kavanaugh denied wrongdoing, but each statement was countered by evidence. Recorded interactions, multiple witness testimonies, campus security footage, and historical complaints previously suppressed by colleagues. "Officer Kavanaugh," Donovan said, her tone unwavering, "these documents demonstrate a pattern of harassment and abuse. Your actions were not isolated. They were systematic and targeted. How do you respond?" Kavanaugh shifted uncomfortably. "I deny the claims. I was performing my duties. Any perception of misconduct is inaccurate." "Then explain the documented instances of intimidation, the recorded derogatory remarks, and the prior complaints ignored by the department." Donovan pressed. Kavanaugh faltered, his confidence cracking. Every denial was weighed against concrete evidence. The dialogue revealed not just misconduct but the mechanisms that had allowed it to persist: bureaucratic indifference, institutional protection, and social complicity. Outside the courtroom, students and community members gathered, holding signs advocating accountability. Whispers of support and indignation mixed, reflecting both social resonance and lingering skepticism. Jasmine felt the hum of expectation, the weight of collective witness pressing down. The judge's gavel struck, signaling procedural acknowledgement. Dialogue in the courtroom shifted to procedural nuances: statements, cross-examinations, and legal clarifications. Each exchange highlighted the fragility of unchecked power and the necessity of documentation and strategy in confronting systemic abuse. Kavanaugh's allies within the department remained silent, some visibly uncomfortable. The mechanisms that had once shielded him were unraveling under the scrutiny of public and legal examination. Every lie, every evasive maneuver was countered by verifiable fact. During a recess, Jasmine and Malik stepped into the courthouse hallway. "It's surreal," Malik whispered. "All that planning, all that fear. It's leading to this moment." "I know," Jasmine replied. "And it's not over. Even if the verdict goes my way, systemic change requires continued vigilance. Exposure alone doesn't guarantee reform." Malik nodded, the weight of shared experience visible in his posture. Dialogue between them emphasized not triumph alone, but the continued responsibility to act, observe, and influence institutional accountability. Back in the courtroom, witness after witness provided testimony supporting Jasmine's claims. Students described intimidation and harassment, corroborating her documentation. Faculty members acknowledged procedural suppression of prior complaints. The cumulative dialogue created an irrefutable narrative, countering attempts to minimize or dismiss her experience. Kavanaugh's demeanor shifted visibly. Defensiveness, frustration, and fear crept into his dialogue. The power dynamic had reversed. What had once been intimidation now faced exposure, accountability, and potential legal consequence. Finally, Donovan addressed the court. The evidence demonstrates systemic abuse, failure of oversight, and targeted harassment. We request full disciplinary action, review of institutional policies, and formal acknowledgement of wrongdoing. The judge nodded, reviewing documents. A brief pause filled the courtroom, heavy with anticipation. Then came the statement. Administrative termination pending final review, public reprimand, and recommended legal investigation. Kavanaugh's career, once secure, now faced irreversible consequences. Jasmine exhaled, a mixture of relief and residual tension. Dialogue with allies reinforced that accountability had been achieved, but at a cost. Emotional strain, public exposure, and lingering trauma remained. Resilience was measured not just by victory, but by capacity to withstand scrutiny and maintain strategic clarity. Outside the courthouse, reporters pressed for statements. Jasmine stepped forward, Malik at her side, and addressed the crowd. This outcome is not simply personal vindication. It represents the possibility of accountability, the necessity of persistence, and the responsibility of institutions to act justly. Power cannot shield misconduct indefinitely. The crowd murmured, social media captured every word, and community awareness deepened. The dialogue resonated beyond the immediate case, signaling broader systemic implications. Later that evening at home, Jasmine reflected quietly. Her parents acknowledged her strategic courage, but reminded her that vigilance remained essential. Dr. Helen Ellis spoke softly. You've catalyzed change, but continued attention is necessary to prevent recurrence. Jasmine nodded, aware that the battle was both external and internal. Trauma, fear, and humiliation remained memories, but they had been transformed into awareness, strategic skill, and resilience. Dialogue, documentation, and persistence had reshaped power dynamics. Before sleeping, she reviewed her notes one final time. Timelines, statements, correspondence, and reflections. Every line represented deliberate strategy, moral clarity, and the transformation of fear into action. Outside, city lights reflected off wet streets, mirroring the turbulence and calm within her. Poetic justice had been achieved. Kavanaugh faced exposure, public scrutiny, and institutional consequence. Jasmine had regained agency, confronted systemic abuse, and ensured accountability. Yet she knew vigilance would always be necessary. Dialogue, alliances, and strategic awareness remained essential tools for confronting institutional bias. The story was both an ending and a beginning, a testament to resilience, courage, and the deliberate dismantling of unchecked power. In the quiet, Jasmine whispered to herself, "Justice has been served, but the work continues. I will remain vigilant, courageous, and strategic, for myself and for those who cannot yet speak."